Finally got a chance to run my goal race for the season, and I used the Vaporfly Next % 3. Been doing a ton of half marathons this year. That was my 4th half marathon this year. I've done 3 on the roads, 1 on the trails. First one, I used the Adidas Takumi Sen 8. Wasn't a great choice. Second one, I used the Nike Vaporfly Next % 3, which was an awesome choice. For the trail half, I used the Norda 001, and then for this recent half I just did, I used the Nike Vaporfly Next % 3. This is still the top tier racing shoe out there, but after using it for this recent half marathon and having a bunch of other half marathons to compare it to, I'm not sure it's the top dog that it once was. So in this video, I'll explain why I think that's changed in this third version. I'll also let you know what's changed from the second version and who it's going to be best for. All right, let's get into it. Alright guys, so before we get into it today, if you haven't checked out the Running Shoe Matcher tool yet, go to runningshoematcher.com. It's a really cool tool I built that matches you with the best shoe for you based on your goals and preferences. So you can go in there, put in if you're looking for a race day shoe like the Vaporfly or a daily trainer or a tempo shoe, if you like your shoes soft or firm, and we'll match you with the best shoe for you. So it's live right now and it's free. Check it out at runningshoematcher.com or click the link in the description below. So quick overview of the Nike Vaporfly Next % 3. This is Nike's main road distance racing shoe, right up there with the Nike Alphafly. This was the original super shoe that pioneered what a super shoe is. The original Nike Vaporfly used that ZoomX foam that we still see in here, paired it with the carbon fiber plate. That's now taken the industry by storm, and every single brand out there now has their own version of this shoe. What makes this shoe so special is the PIBA foam that's in the midsole, which Nike calls ZoomX. It gives great energy return. The initial studies show that it can improve up to 4% in running economy, hence why that first shoe was called the Nike Vaporfly 4%. And some recent studies have still validated that the Vaporfly is still one of the top most efficient shoes out there. Now this third version sticks to the same formula: ZoomX, FlyPlate, lightweight upper. There's not really any major changes from the version 2. Everything is just softened up a little bit from what we saw in that version 2. Everything's kind of given a rounded edge, not as angular as before, but the main formula is still there. This is extremely lightweight. It's one of the lightest weight racing shoes out there still. No brand has really been able to rival what Nike does with this. It's 6.5 ounces for that US men's size 9 sample size. Then we got a 40mm stack of ZoomX in the heel and a 32mm stack of ZoomX in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. As with the previous version, upper is extremely light on the foot, and it's got a decent covering of rubber here in the forefoot, pretty full cover in the forefoot, and then strategically placed outsole rubber in the back here. Alright, diving into the midsole here, ZoomX is still super soft. Now, that's ZoomX's claim to fame: soft and bouncy, super foam. It pioneered that, right? That's what Pebax is going to give you in nearly any shoe that you use it in, except for the Tracksmith Elliott Runner. The Pebax in there is firm, but that's a story for another day. That's a review for another video, which I've done. I'll link it below. But in general, Pebax is going to be very soft, very bouncy. That's what we get here. But the main difference here is, for some reason, it feels just a tiny bit softer than we saw before in the Vaporfly Next % 2, and that was a very soft shoe. I'm not sure if it's because they've done something a little bit different with how the foam is shaped up here in the forefoot, but on landing, I'm getting even a softer feel, even a softer ride than I had before in that Vaporfly Next % 2. So my last big experience with the Vaporfly Next % 2 was in my half marathon earlier this year, where I ran 1:23:09, and this one I ran 1:19:28. Those were both PRs at the time. So running very fast, and this shoe, it still felt a little bit soft, a little bit less aggressive than I would have liked in that last shoe. Now, what I do like about this midsole is there's lots of cool little design flares. So you see there's a cutout piece here, save a little bit of weight. Same thing, cutout around the bottom. You can actually hear the FlyPlate if I can get my finger down in there. Around the back, we got this nice little Nike check, little logo, and then this is the Eliud Kipchoge version. So on the inside of the shoe, we got the little "No Human is Limited." Now, in terms of the ride of this, again, it's going to be that soft balance, it's going to be that energy return feeling, and it's going to be a bit less aggressive than I think we saw before. Now, I'm a bit of a heel striker, and when I'm running fast, I don't find that an issue in these, but I wouldn't use these for anything slower than marathon pace. You can do your warm-up and cool down in this, but it's not going to feel the most natural, because again, that heel around the back, like we see in a lot of race day shoes, is narrower to save some weight. You can see that the forefoot around here is much wider than we're seeing in the back, so that's that's going to be the main area where you're going to want to land in the shoe, is that forefoot. Now, when I picked this up to half marathon pace and faster, it has that floating along feeling. If you compare it to a shoe like the Adidas Takumi Sen, that feeling is a little bit more aggressive because it's non-rockered shoe, it's flatter, it's firmer, and when I dig and really start to push the pace, I feel like I'm a bit more in control than when I'm in the shoe. That's the big difference on the ride, right? When you push the pace in this, the shoe is kind of doing that work for you. You feel like you're floating along. You're not going to really pop off the forefoot. The foam is really controlling that experience and almost deadening the experience. Now, this is designed as a marathon shoe. It's not designed as a half marathon shoe. So I bet if I use this for a full length marathon, I'd feel a bit differently than I do, that maybe this is the ideal shoe for that distance. I don't think it's the ideal shoe for the half marathon distance, and that's what I've been racing. I think the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 2 did a better job at that distance. Felt like there was a bit less foam in the forefoot. I'm not sure why, because it says the specs are similar, but just maybe it's the way that there's contoured, the way that the rocker starts and stops in this. It feels like there's a little bit too much under the forefoot than I would prefer for the half marathon distance. Now, the nice thing about the ride in this compared to the two, the forefoot does seem to have a little bit more of a rocker. It's not going to be as aggressive as what we see in the Endorphin Pro 3, especially because in the Endorphin Pro 3 you get that little back rocker here, so it really rolls you along. But this one does have a nice gentle rolling in the front. Again, for that marathon distance where you're not going to be going all out for that pace, this is the perfect amount of rocker to just have you gliding along. That's the headline with the shoe. It's a gliding, rolling, floating type of feel. It's not an aggressive pushing the pace all out shoe type of feel. I do think there are better options on the market for shorter distance races now. This is no longer the shoe that it once was, right, where you'd pull for it for every single distance. I think if you're going half marathon or below, you might want to choose something else. I have not found the perfect half marathon shoe yet, and that's going to be my quest over these next few months as I go for my next half marathon goal, which I'm not going to put out there into the universe yet, but looking to shave a few more minutes off my time from 119 to, I don't know, let's see what it is in a few months. But when I do that, I don't know if I'm gonna be reaching for the Vaporfly Next Percent 3. I think I'm gonna be going for something a bit more aggressive, a bit firmer, maybe the Endorphin Elite, maybe checking out the Hoka Rocket X, or maybe even one of those ASIC shoes. The Edge looks like a solid option for that, with a bit lower stack in the forefoot and a firmer foam. Heading up to the upper, now this is where I think they shaved a lot of weight off compared to some of those other shoes in the market, because this is actually completely see-through. You can see that these holes here are legitimately holes. There's nothing in between these. There's no other waterproof fabric or anything, which does mean water will get in, but it's also extremely breathable on foot. This is the only colorway that I actually really like from this series that they have right now. The other ones are either too gaudy or just there's not much going on, like that white and silver one. This is an absolutely beautiful looking shoe. There's this cream foam in the midsole, and this upper is white with this red stripe. One area that the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 struggled a bit was with the heel, with the lockdown. They revised this a little bit to give you more padding on the inside of the shoe. So if you can see here on the inside, there is this little pillow that cradles your Achilles. I found the lockdown on this to be absolutely spectacular, no issues, and especially if you did a runner's knot or just cinch the laces tighter, then I think if you did have any residual issues when lacing it up, that would be all gone. I just lace it to the second to last one and do my normal tie, and I had no issues. In general, the lockdown and lacing here is solid. I think they cleaned up the lacing a little bit compared to what was on the version 2. Version 2 seemed to be a little bit more off kilter, off center. This one seems like it's more centered. It was also a bit easier to lace in, also a bit easier to get my foot in. I'm not sure why. Maybe they left this opening a bit more, but all in all, this was a very comfortable shoe, comfortable upper, a little bit more so than we saw in version 2, and you can get the lockdown a little bit better than in version 2. All right, guys, down to the outsole and durability. So that is going to be the key point of contention for the shoe. And right off the top, I should mention, this is a racer, which means it's designed to race 1 or 2 or 3 goal races for you. And that's how you should be thinking about using the shoe. Now, if you are a heel striker, you're going to be seeing some serious degradation and abrasion on the foam in the first few runs. You can see here, after 1 half marathon and a few tune-up miles in this shoe, I completely chewed up the back of this ZoomX foam here. Now, I do have something a little bit weird going on with my stride right now that I'm gonna need to fix. I'm not usually this much of a heel striker, and it happens when my form gets worse, but you can see that if you are a heel striker, you're gonna be eating up into this foam here. I have to say though, same thing happened on the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 same little thing with the back of the shoe. So it's not unique to this shoe, but it is unique to the ZoomX. Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 is a bit more covered on the back of the shoe than this. There's more rubber coverage, so you are going to get more durability. This is not a shoe designed for durability. It's a shoe designed for performance in the marathon distance, and that's what it's going to deliver. In terms of the actual rubber though, I mean, it's rubber, right? It does cover most of the forefoot up and around. Unless you're putting 500, 600, 700, 800 miles in one pair of these, you shouldn't have many issues with durability of this forefoot rubber. Nike's rubber in general on their road running shoes is pretty solid and will last for hundreds of miles. And if we're talking about the performance of the rubber, I've run in the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 in the wet weather, and the grip on that was excellent. I haven't run in the wet weather yet with these in the Next Percent 3 just because this colorway is so beautiful and I don't want to mess it up. But I don't imagine that the rubber would have gotten any worse than it did in the Next Percent 2. If they kept it the same, it should be pretty decent performance. It does feel pretty grippy just walking around, and it feels very similar to the touch as it is in the Next Percent 2, so I think this should deliver some solid wet weather performance. In terms of who this is best for, this is a great shoe if you're looking for a marathon shoe that's on the softer and more comfortable side, and you also want to go for a new PR. This is not a shoe that's designed for comfort in the purest sense, but it is comfortable for a race day shoe, and that the foam is a bit softer underfoot than some of the other popular marathon shoes on the market. Now, where it falls down a bit for the recreational runner is the heel area isn't the most stable. It's a bit narrower. If you're running with good form, that shouldn't be an issue, but if you start to overpronate or heel strike or start having some weakness in your ankles toward the end of a run, it might be a bit uncomfortable to run in these. If you're finishing in the 4-hour marathon range and you do want something comfortable and a bit more stable, there are better options out there now than the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 3. Things like the Adidas Boston 12 or the Hoka Mach X. They mix the PIBA, or their super foam in the case of Adidas, the supercritical TPEE. They mix that with an EVA, which is going to make it a more stable planted shoe. But if you're not concerned about stability and you just want to shave time off your marathon PR, then this is still a great shoe. I don't think it's the best choice for half marathon and below anymore. I would go for a bit of a firmer shoe if you're really looking to push the pace and shave some time off your PR. I've yet to come up with the perfect half marathon shoe for me, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm going to be checking out some other shoes in those categories. I also think this is a serviceable option for long runs with marathon pace, especially if you just want to break in the shoe, get it on your foot. It doesn't require a ton of break in, but just run with it before you run with it in the marathon. But there are training shoes designed for marathon pace during long runs right now, like again that Adidas Boston 12, even that Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, Hoka Mach X. Those types of shoes are going to be more comfortable training options, more durable training options than this. Because if you start to use this for all your long runs with marathon pace, put 100, 150 miles on it over the course of your training block, it's not going to deliver the same performance on race day as it would if it only had 30 miles on it out of the box. So my recommendation is, if you are a neutral runner, if you want something soft for the marathon, this is a good choice. Pair it with a different shoe for your long runs during training, and you will be golden for race day. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe to the channel. I come out with videos every day. Appreciate you watching, and I will see you tomorrow.